I won't be on Tuesday, they're up in the bathroom out on Monday.
All right.
So I won't be there at least when they do the first fix. Like,
What do you want managers got?
Well, I'll put it in here.
Eyes run off.
Phil wanted this.
You're going on with the
Yeah, so well, like it, and I think so.
Right.
So I may need that.
Oh, he's on that case, that's for you then in that case.
Right.
Yeah, I've got a problem next week because it's taking back to
Somebody put his picture behind.
Yeah, you should be so lucky.
Thanks for that, Quentin.
I'd be a bit worried if you were.
Right, I've got a chap coming from the office tonight, prospective member, been minding for 2 years to come and have a look at what we're about down here.
Won't get out until he signed up then.
He's deigned to come tonight. This was a chap that said
He won't get out until he signed up.
these new mineral wagons, 30 quid, I dare say he'll wince when I
get the form out from there, so this is what you do.
Tell him the treasurer used to be a member of the You do it.
Yeah, sure.
Well, basically, I had to build a bloody wagon properly. I can tell you about 5 or 6 minutes or whatever, but I've got to string it out between 7:30 and 9:30, haven't I?
I think it does.
Mine was updated all last night. Still the same.
Build the backside wagon and have it turned around on the layer in about 4 hours. But it's not painted, left it in weather.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
It takes 3 times as long.
Yeah,
The screen you used to see on Windows.
I like what that. Really paints the weather in the top one.
I've seen it. Can't set it. You change it yourself.
Especially with the old wagon, old parkland wagons.
I think you have to right click the screen.
Well,
Well,
Yeah, shut an option. Drop down Why would you do this?
Have you been able to send out an invite?
We're just live streaming it.
Sometimes.
Just live streaming it.
I've got
Yeah, it's on the website.
Right.
It's just on the website.
Just to members area.
Yeah.
Are you able to send an email out telling people to log into a members area?
I can do.
Because, you know, I don't think there's many people who...
No, sorry. I literally got
You
back
need to do it again.
midnight last night.
Right.
Slightly delayed on arrival, like, compared with the 3.5 hour delay going on. But, yeah, I think, I guess we need to have a... I think this is quite a good way to do this. Because the reason for doing this whole set of arguments that it was not like that you had to go physically to the meeting and the arguments that people won't come.
Well, I say mine did it last night, and it turned itself
And
off.
I think the idea of
It
having
turned
this
off sometimes.
it was
Download it.
that's the way we had time to use it.
Yeah.
So that you can show prospective members as well.
Everything was exactly the same as it was before. Nothing changed on my screen. And I typed a couple of emails today without any problem.
Hi, Peter, you alright?
I'm on the regime with the iPods, you know.
Yeah.
She said, well, it's all right, go. You come back
Yeah. Right. Well, first, I've been standing on my computer on this, and I opened it. More buggers. They're everywhere. Those are assembled ones. This is assembled, ready to rebuild.
Anyway, just thought what's
Right.
It was purely and simply to help us get floors up and downstairs. Thinking about doing two what she did also,
I'm just trying to remember how all this went. There must be boards there where you know, where we put on that board where they're on like the trunk thing, aren't they? I don't remember how it was, now just want to take all this down now. I'm scratching on it here.
I think I own you know.
So I need to trolley thing.
Somebody asking me directions.
Oh, there's some.
You need another table. Malcom.
Need what?
You need another table. You're getting a bit full
No,
now.
it's alright, I'll soon go. Hi, you alright? Right, we'll just come on in. I'll come out to the front door.
What's the new member?
Drag him in.
One of best behaviour now, new member.
Yeah, you behave.
We all English country gentlemen we are.
The crowd surfing.
You're talking about
They're not like to get
Oh, whatever. Oh, the Lord.
Yeah.
He's on the TV, but not you know, the rail of the ship.
I was saying I was on. I looked, I forgot to look.
Get yourself about you, Mr. James. Don't worry.
Oh gosh,
See that?
I'll have to charge them, I'll have to write to them and say, look, rails.
You need an agent now, don't you?
You'd be a good one, wouldn't you, Phil? Yeah, you could.
Being in the business before.
You get as much as you can for us. Get down to rails.
10 bob a throw, is it?
Well, is it normally 10% of the fee or something?
Yeah, no, I suddenly open, I get 10%.
That'll make it work hard.
12 and a half at least. Yeah.
There you go.
Beware of strangers bearing gifts to Simon. Just take a few seconds. That's his
If you don't know,
ambition.
just call him old Doug. I'm Doug. And there's Doug there.
No.
Yeah, you see him.
That's that's his ambition for you. Die-cast and Flying Scotsman and a Westinghouse Pump 9F. That'll do nicely. So, when I've emptied this, do I pass it round at half time for you to show your appreciation?
I'm more take out rather than put in.
Yeah.
You're not crappy when
Are you going to be doing a lot of close-up stuff? Or are you going to be demonstrating it at home?
Well, I'll just be talking through it. So I've got some stuff to show people. I'll pass some stuff around.
Right, there's nothing you're going to show on the table that you'd like a close-up of? Or
No.
Alright, good, that makes life easy. Well, I don't need you to do a job.
Don't need to what?
I don't need you to do a job.
What was the
I
job?
was going to give you this.
Oh, I see. To
You can take that and
point
About
to
14.
stage, right? Okay.
Well, if it starts 7:30, about
Close
20
up.
past 8.
Past 8.
Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Round about then. we will.
That's more a railway. For ourselves, actually, in this we have never failed. The only or realism that inspires someone, Roman, to work in dust and dirt on their lines, even on the school, actually, do not present
Yeah, moving on.
Okay, good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to our Friday night meetings. There are no club announcements that I've been given, so we'll get straight on with the subject. Our own member, Malcom, who we all know is an exceptionally good modeller, is going to show us how to build 4mm plastic wagon kits. So with no further ado, I'll hand you over to Malcom.
Right, good evening. Well, thanks for coming. So basically, what we're going to look at doing tonight, nothing fancy, just to build a wagon that works. What we're going to be talking about, instead of paying something like 30 quid for something like that, paying either 4 quid for an unmade second-hand kit and building into the same thing, or buying something that's been discarded like this for a couple of quid and retreading it into something like this, which this and this are one and the same thing, and that's been trundling around Dewsbury Midland for 24 years now, as well as Charwelton. But the thing that strikes me with kits is a lot of people haven't had a go, and a lot of people have had a go and failed as well. I think we've all been to exhibitions, bring and buys, seen boxes underneath stands at swap meets and what have you, where you've got this sort of thing for between 50p for a couple of quid. The problem with it is the couplings don't work on them. It's tension lock couplings. A lot of stuff doesn't have weights. That's got plasticine stuffed in it, and frequently the wheels aren't very good either. The running qualities. So what I'm going to do tonight is focus on three things. First and foremost, how to build the chassis square, because if you don't build the chassis square, then basically you're stuffed, you're on hiding to nothing to start with. How to add weight. It doesn't need to weigh the sort of weight of that in order to work, and also how to sort out some decent couplings. And in my experience, these are the three things that the manufacturers never tell you in the instructions. And I've looked avidly for Parkside models now, Pico, bringing out this, started a bit earlier. Yeah, I've waited avidly for Pico bringing out this delayed Parkside British Railway Standard 13-ton, if you're on it, 13-ton hopper wagon. They've built one in railway model, which is great, encouraging people how to do things, but they don't tell you how to weight it. I mean, you can imagine a hopper wagon without any weights on it, it'll just bump off the track all along. So as I say, that's primarily what we're going to look at. Build it square, how to add weight, how to sort the couplings out and what have you. We'll go through some of the stuff that I've built, we'll have a break, have a cup of tea, and then I'll go through some more individual wagons and things like painting and weathering and what, just the basics, how to go about it, but also mixing and matching, because basically kit building wagons, it opens up a whole new vista for swapping stuff about, bodging, if you like, to create other derivatives. And also it's a very cheap way of building up a extensive freight stock if you know how to retread stuff that's second hand, like the cattle wagon that I'm passing around. Now there's a fourth thing as well. They always say you're doing a presentation, give them a list of three, but the fourth thing that would also touch on is wheels, because again, if the wheels aren't round, I won't say you're stuffed, they're not likely to derail or whatever, but they will wobble. And what we're about is basically trying to build something that's compatible with what you can buy from the ready-to-run manufacturers, and basically indistinguishable, which I hope you think a lot of these on the table are pretty much indistinguishable. Now, we're going to have a look at new kits, but I'm also going to look, as I say, at older kits and how to refurbish them, because there's a rich vein to be mined there in terms of the sort of stuff I'm passing around and some of the stuff that I've brought with me today. We're mainly going to be looking at plastic kits. I'm going to touch on white metal kits. I'm also going to touch on the old Pico wonderful wagons, which again, they're still in production today, this tank wagon, which is now branded as Parkside. But again, you can pick them up second hand for next to nothing. And if you want a good model of a 1938 Air Ministry tank wagon, which was adopted as standard by most of the major ore companies, it's a very good way to go about it, because frankly the ready-to-run ones aren't that accurate. I'm not going to cover etch brass, because basically I don't build etch brass wagon kits. I've got one etch brass wagon kit, which is for the aforementioned 13-ton hopper wagon, but I'm never going to build it now, because Parkside have brought a kit out, and you know, why make work for yourself, as the expression goes. But basically where I'm coming from, the idea is to build something that will run, that will be compatible with your ready-to-run wagon, and to do it ideally for somewhere around about a 10 or something, as opposed to 30 quid. Now, again, what I'd also just say, I'm not going to be talking about building 3-link couplings, fully sprung and fully detailed on RJ type wagons. That's not where I'm coming from. There's plenty of stuff in the library how to do that. If what floats your boat, what I'm talking about is building up, if you should so want, an extensive fleet of wagons quite cheaply, or the other thing, introducing a bit of variety into wagon fleet, looking at the stuff that the ready-to-run boys don't do. And along the way, we'll have a look at the tools, and as I say, we'll touch on things like painting as well. So, to set the scene a little further, and this might introduce a wry smile with somebody in the audience, what sort of really worked as a catalyst for this was somebody said to me, Rapido, I think it is, they've just released a new LMS 5-plank wagon, and you know, it's 30 quid, and I'm like thinking, great or whatever. And I said, what, 30 quid for an LMS 5-plank? I said, I'm used to paying about 2 quid for one. And the reason for saying that is the kits of them have been in production for 50 years. The 3H Mouldings kit probably came out about 1972, 1973. You can pick them up box second hand for about 2 quid. And they actually have wheels in them, and unusually for a kit manufacturer, they have things to mount the couplings on, and they actually have a weight in it as well. They've thought it out thoroughly 50 years ago. It's also one of the earliest kits that Parkside Kits did, and I think it was handed over to Colin Ashby. Whether it's still in production with Coopercraft or something like that nowadays, I don't know. But what we're talking about is this type of thing here. And again, just getting some stuff together for this, I found this xerograph or whatever you used to call it in the days before photocopying instructions sheet for Westie kits made by Ian Kirk. Again, it's probably 45 years old. It's one size fits all. That's the instruction sheet for all his kits. And it mentions here about the LMS 5 plank on which kit number WK009 is based. They're built during the period 1923 to 1930, surviving on British Railways to 1962 and then sold to industry. Some are still in use. Well, they were when this was done 45 years ago, and others are preserved. Where they say they're preserved, they probably rotted away by now, because that's into the face of those wooden wagons on preserved railways. Hiya Dan, come on in. So what did you start with, mate? I think there's a chair at the back if you want.
Very nice, actually. I feel like a Ricky man.
Anyway, unabashed by this, the same person had said to me a few weeks later, have you seen the Actroscale? They're doing a diagram 108 16-ton mineral wagon, which is the most popular mineral wagon on British Railways. They built about 250,000 of them. I said, yeah, but I said, it's 30 quid again. I said, I'm used to paying 4 quid for one of those. And he said, but if you buy a set of 3, it's only 76 quid. 5.33. Now, if you want to model the last South Lancashire coalfield, which is what floats my boat, it's a bloody expensive way to go about things. So as I say, that's the catalyst for it, and I'm the same as anybody. I'm not averse to spending good money on highly detailed wagon models and what have you. Every so often, it makes you feel good to do this sort of thing. But as I say, you want to build up a large fleet, particularly say 16-ton mineral wagons. There's a far easier way to go about it, and that's a kit that's been in production for about 64 years now, and it still holds it on today. But this basically is what's fallen in the genesis of the book today. Hi, Paul. Come on in.
It's October. Don't want to get the street.
So, I'll just say a bit about my own interest in wagons, and some of you have heard this before, so I apologise for boring you again, but I grew up in the South Lancashire coalfield. My own interest lie in the period about 1960s, 1970s, because that's what I remember as a child, as a teenager. But what I'm going to tell you, it's also transferable to the blue diesel trade. There's a lot of this stuff knocking about either in departmental use. You used to see banana vans. Never saw a train of banana vans or anything, or a banana van in revenue service, but it seems to be a popular wagon for stores vans and things like that. And the other thing I'd say also about what I'm going to tell you is hopefully some might be transferable to hose gauge kits. It's certainly transferable to 2mm scale kits, because I built 2mm kits for cheap toy using the same principles. But getting back to where my own interest comes from, the main thing that I used to see train spotting was 16 tonners full of coal. They were everywhere, with the exception of the Manchester to Southport line. You used to see them trundling through Manchester Victoria, Agecroft, the Woodhead route, the line through Lynn. They were literally everywhere up until, I wouldn't say the mid-1970s, I would say about 1977, 1978 in this area. And then the merry-go-round started to come in earnest, but they were trundling about each and every day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year. So obviously I model coal wagons because I saw so many of them. Other abiding memory of the 1970s is down at Agecroft, Brindle Heath, Pendleton, round that area, sidings absolutely full of 12-ton vans. Now generally these would be our standard vans like the Hornby 00, the Wren, the Batman models with the corrugated ends and the 2 doors, but there's also a fair smattering in those days of the LMS derived vans like this with the big sliding doors. Now one of the mysteries of those was they all were always there through the summer. We used to go and clamber in them, slide the doors back, get in, this sort of thing and what have you. I'm ashamed to say possibly even lit a fire in the corner of one now and then without,
Oh, it's got
That
to
was you, wasn't it?
but unfortunately without burning it out. And then, as it sort of got to around about November time, it all disappeared, and we thought, oh, it must have gone for scrapping, because you saw plenty of stuff Malcom for scrapping. Now, we didn't play out too much then in November, December, basically because it was too cold in those pre-global warming days. But when we started to venture out again towards the end of February, the beginning of March, they were all back again. And I used to think, oh, and of course it's taken the best part of 50 years to figure out what's what. Back in the day, they were equivalent of a white transit van. And they all used to disappear around Christmas time for carrying mail order goods from the old woolen warehouses in Bradford and places like that, or cotton warehouses in Bolton and Oldham, the mills, etc. That was where the catalogue companies in those days, mail order catalogues, base and stuff, and this base themselves, and this stuff all went out by rail, and of course with the Christmas rush on. So quite what Dr. Beecham would have made it, given the way he decimated the coaching stock in the 1960s that wasn't used. So rows and rows of vans sat for 9 months a year. I don't know. I can only assume the traffic must have been profitable. Now, other things that I used to see, oil trains on the Lynn line at Heathland Warburton and Lynn Lane Level Crossing. That seems to be a fairly permanent fixture, possibly because my parents went out around about the same time, weekend each week. And we went out that way into Cheshire because that's where my dad came from, and we must have got gated on a regular basis. But it was a 47 used to go through, and tank trains. You see the tank trains going through Patricroft, and Eccles as well. You see a lot of transcontinental ferry vans around Oldfield Road and Liverpool Road in Manchester. Now the thing I'm talking about there is that long wheelbase van that Trine Hornby have done as a model for getting on for 50 years. It has the Flying Crate logo on the door, door to door, the big sliding door, and I think Accurascale or somebody's done a model of it more recently. So I used to see a lot of those, but for some bizarre reason I've never had a desire to model one. North Wales we used to see cattle vans. Don't recollect seeing one with any cattle in it since about the 1960s order, but used to see them because they had to be taken away either for storage or for cleaning or whatever. And again, they were quite common, trundling about, because I believe, other than the Cowes line, North Wales was the last place that used cattle wagons on British Rail. That's right, that was about 1975 and 1977, something like that. We used to see gunpowder vans in North Wales as well. We used to see gunpowder vans at Gathurst on the Wigan to Southport line. And then the other thing you used to see was long trains of 5 planks. And again, I couldn't understand what these were about because it didn't appear to have anything in them, but I gather they might have been used for moving road salt. So, containers, the only thing I saw container-wise were Freightliner, but there were plenty of the small A-type containers and the B-type containers that British Railways had used through the 1950s and the 1960s. They were dumped all over the place at the line side as huts and stores and what I've encouraged some in you saw them in farmers' yards as well. So that's where it comes from. Didn't see so much plate wagons, bogie bolsters, this type of thing, the specials, other than at Windsor Bridge in Salford. And some of you may remember, if you ever commuted into Salford over the A6, where Salford Crescent Station is now, used to go over the overbridge there, and down on the right hand side where I think they built this spur in that connects the lines north of Manchester to the lines through Piccadilly and what have you. There was a wagon works there that used to be the Manchester and Leeds Railway locomotive works until Horwich opened, and then it became a wagon works. And there was all this interesting stuff stood in the yard there to look at, the sort of stuff you didn't see every day. But the other place where you saw them was Brindle Heath Sidings at Pendleton. And again, 50 years on, I wonder where the two things linked, that basically Brindle Heath Sidings was like a holding place for wagons going into Windsor Bridge repair yards. Engineered wagons, in my experience, are very, very few and far between, so I've never modelled them. Possibly saw them at Guy Bridge, maybe Wigan Moorgate, Goods Yard. The thing I remember from the 1970s as engineered wagons were ones that were branded, I think it was EEE and painted black, and they all had the flattened roofs on them, and they were used for the overhead electrification, where they were predominantly carriages and then wagons that were long wheelbase that were adopted for playing out the BICC cables for the overhead electrification. So that's where my interest came from. As you can see, that's what I model. So let's get down and have a look at some modelling. Now, first thing to touch on is the tools that you need, because if you've been a bit wary of having a go, I reckon this is all you need to get yourself started. You need a craft knife. My preferred thing is the Swan Malcom with the number 2 blades, and I'll come back to why I like the number 2 blades. It's because it's easy to get things apart if you buy second hand and to carve things up as well. You need some adhesive, which I would say never use polystyrene cement, what we used to call airfix glue as kids. Always use bottle cement, either Slater's Met Pack, Humbrol poly, or Humbrol liquid poly, or Tommy Eye liquid cement, something like that. Decent brush for putting it on with. Emery board. Main thing really you need the emery board for, in my experience, is get occasionally just a bit of adjustment to get the roofs on vans. And with parkside kits, the sole bars tend to be a bit rough and ready with them on moulding lines, so you can drag the sole bar down the emery board a couple of times like that, just to smooth it off before you glue it on the wagon floor. A rough cut file comes in handy for speeding the job up. And to put the couplings on, or if you're building airfix kits to bore the axle boxes out to take brass bearings, you need a pin chuck and you need a drill, typically around about 1.5 to 2 millimetres for the drill, and something like a 0.9 millimetre drill for fitting the couplings, which I put on with Hornby track pins, that are intended for knocking in your plywood or whatever on your hardboard on your 8x4 kiddies layout. So again, possibly micro box of drill bits as well. But I tend not to use the drills so much myself nowadays. Instead, what I use is dentist burrs. And I use a dentist burr that's about 1.5 for opening the axle boxes out. It's just a lot faster than drilling. But the other thing is, if the wagon's been made already, you can get it in past the existing axle boxes at an angle to ream them out. And I have a burr at the other end that's about 4 millimetres, and I use that for countersinking the axle box to put top hat bearings in. Now, I found that a pretty invaluable tool. You can also actually buy a fancy tool for drilling the axle boxes out. They're about £10, I think, and Alan Gibson sells them, and the H&A models that do wagon kits, that specialise in wagon kits, they sell them, but I find they're getting on quite well with that. In fact, I'll pass that around for a closer look at it. Sorry? Well, again, the other thing is, where do you get stuff from? And you get those from Squires with the demise of Eileen's. Not that I have a particular care for Eileen's in recent years anyway. You see Squires at York Model Railway Show, Preston Model Railway Show, you'll be at Warwick. Now, optional things to have. Brush for dusting off plastic dust. Nip one of the Weiss wake up brushes, it always comes in handy. Pair of snips for cutting up lead sheet for weighting the wagons. Now, you might think, I can use a Stanley knife to do that, but I can't advise you to use a Stanley knife, because if you're cutting it on a steel rule like that with your fingers, sooner or later the knife will slip. When it does, it will take the end of your finger off, and I know, because I am that person. You can see the scar. The only thing that I can't quite get my head around is my finger has grown back in the original shape, because it was a right chunk that was missing off it. So cut lead sheet, either use snips, or the other thing is piece of wood or whatever, use a chisel, something like that. And where you cut the edges, cutting the lead, you then file it off with your rough cut side. So razor saw comes in handy, handles being optional. Talked about brushes, talked about emery boards, finer cut Swiss file, that comes in handy. Some coffee stirrers for stirring paint, milk bottle tops for mixing paints in, for weathering and things like that. You don't need to open the can and stir the whole can. I generally scoop some goo out of the bottom together with some of the linseed oil at the top, and then just mix it in the milk bottle top, chuck it away at the end. And the other thing is, where you're using brass bearings, you need to lubricate them. Now, I've not brought a bottle of oil down tonight for obvious reasons, but if you're using oil, you need something like Daywalt that isn't going to attack polystyrene plastic. Well, the other thing that I use quite frequently is this greasing, which is for KD couplings. It's powdered graphite, and you can get it from Chester Model Centre. Or alternatively, you just make your own by rubbing a pencil on an emery board and then tapping the emery board on a piece of paper like this and gathering it up, it still gets you to the same place. And a roll of tammy-eye, if you're serious about doing this and getting into building lots of wagons, a roll of tammy-eye masking tape either. Sorry, I should say, rather than saying either, I should say it as well. Comes in handy, and you can get that from most model shops. So and that's really all you need to get yourself started. You don't need airbrushes, you don't need soldering iron and all the rest of these funny things that people amass on an occasion. Oh, and the other thing you need a bottle of thick super glue as well for attaching the weights, and tube of Alvite doesn't go amiss on occasion. I use Alvite Rapid, and again, word of warning, I've been using Alvite Rapid for 40 odd years. It's never ever let me down. But I've used the Rocket epoxy adhesives, and basically things falling apart and disintegrated. It's all been mixed properly, it's disintegrated in about 6 years or something like that. So stick to Alvite. I think it's the old adage, you get what you pay for. So we said, build it square, weight it properly, and couplings at work. So let's have a bit of a further look at that. So the first thing is bearing types, and I'd say what you do need is a selection of bearings, but they're not expensive, so it's quite easy to build stuff up. And bearings generally fall into 4 types. You've got shouldered or top hat bearings, and they come either with a deep V in them or they come with a shallow V in them. They are both handy to have, because if you've got side play in your axles, it's very easy using a blade like this. Ping the top hat out and either put a deeper one in or put a shallower one in, either to introduce side play or to eradicate some of the side play. You can also get shoulderless bearings, which again are very handy to have, particularly if you're converting airfix kits. And then you've got the old faithful, obsolete now, but you can still get them. They still have the place to part to play with all the things like all the Pico wonderful wagons and what have you. And that's the Jackson cup bearing, where basically it's like a piece of brass tube, and that's for the old Jackson wheels of 40 years ago, whatever, that had blunt-ended axles. But don't turn your nose up at them; they still work very well. And this has got the Jackson blunt-ended axles. You could do a little bit of lubrication on it. Again, that model's about 50 years old now, but I didn't build that myself. I bought it at Bolton Flea Market for about 50p, which is probably about £10 in today's money. Now, where I'm saying about building it square, I'm actually just getting back to the bearings. Now, there's various types of bearings as well that you can have a look at, and there's an axle guard at the back there with some top hat bearings in. Where I'm saying build it square, the first thing is to get your axles in square, that they're perpendicular or at 90 degrees to the sole bars. And the other thing as well is to get your axles in line, so that when you look at the end of the wagon beneath the buffer beam, that both axles are in alignment. What you don't want is something like that, where the axles are out of alignment, and it's all too common. When you put your wagon down, you can tap it at one end where it's riding on 3 wheels, and the 4th one it taps. It's like tapping out Morse code. You can tap out SOS or whatever. Now, if you do get that, it's easy to correct, but it's best to avoid it in the first place. And where we're talking about axles not being square, we're talking about something like this, where, as I say, instead of being at a right angle to the sole bars, they're at an angle instead. Now, your wagon will run if it's like that, but it won't run very well because it cramps going down the track, and it's all the while trying to straighten itself onto the rails, but the wheels aren't in alignment with the rails, so the result of which you get a shimmy or a wobble as it's going down the track. But it's like everything else. If you can anticipate the problem beforehand, you can do something about it. And it literally is this simple. These are the 2 things that cause the most problems with kit-built wagons running. The axles not being square to sole bars, or the axles being out of alignment in the horizontal plane, like we can see there. So how do we go about correcting these things? Well, generally where you get this, with the axles not square, it's either the thing's been put together in a hurry without some thought, or actually there's a fault with certain kits, and that is the sole bars are moulded On the sprue goes down the middle, and you've got two identical sole bars. But when you put them on the model, they're not a mirror image. One's a left hand and one's a right hand. So if you've got any dimensional error, that then plays out on the underside of the wagon, that you end up that your axles aren't square to sole bars. And most commonly what happens is that one sole bar, the sole bars are longer at one end than the other. So when you come to put them on the wagon, you end up with this, that the axle guards aren't in alignment and therefore the wheels aren't in alignment. But it's fairly easy to remedy. As I say, it's like everything else. You anticipate the problem, then what we do is we cut a piece off the end of the sole bar, as I've shown there, and then you can slide the thing along. So if that's the one that's out of alignment in red, we chop the end of the sole bar, very exaggerated, and we slide it along, as you can see there. And basically what that does with the wagon then, again very exaggerated, it leaves us with a gap at one end. Now if you wanted, you could glue the missing piece back on. Frankly, I never bother, because we ain't talking about massive amounts of plastic card that's been removed. And again, a prime example of one that I've done, if I just pass this around, for those of you that your eyesight's good enough, you'll see that the sole bars don't touch the headstocks where the buffers are, but hey, life's too short. If I've got a piece of plastic card to hand, I could have glued it in, but as I say, you don't notice when it's trundling around the layout. So if we do that, that brings everything back nice and square. So turning to the axles being out of alignment, where you can tap one corner of the model and it's like a Morse tapper. There's two ways we can sort that out. That's where the original axle box hole is, on the one that is not riding riding correctly in relation to the others. We can either elongate the hole and move the bearing up, and this is where the dentist burr comes in very handy. If you've built the wagon already, you can just elongate the hole upwards by going into an angle and move the bearing up. And use a bit of Mepac or something like that to hold the bearings in place, and you can easily prise them out or move them about if you want. Don't use super glue or something like that that's going to embed it in there for eternity. If you need to move the bearing down to bring the wheels in alignment with each other, then the other thing is you can elongate the axle hole downwards. But if you do that, you need to put a packing piece into the gap out of a piece of scrap plastic or whatever. But again, very easily to do. Or a favourite trick that I have, being a bodger, is to get the craft knife here, cut along the edge of the sole bar, so I can lift the sole bar up like that, where the axle guard needs adjusting, and put a packing piece in. Again, it sounds horrendous when you see it on the diagram like that, but believe you me, it works, and it saves pulling everything apart. And the other thing is, by comparison with moving the bearings, it's a bit easier to adjust. And again, I've got a prime example here with this 3H co-copper. Now that is about probably about the 5th or 6th wagon that I've ever built. Back in 1981, I think I built this. I think the instructions said, build the hopper body, put it upside down like that, build the chassis onto it, and I did, and basically the sole bars were like this, and the wheels. So nice paint job and all the rest of it, but it no couplings. It wouldn't run, so it sat in a box for about the best part of 30 years. And then one day I thought, I'm going to tackle that. So I did what I say. I cut the sole bars away from the body supports and put a packing piece in and brought the thing level. Put some couplings on it, using the backman couplings, put a bit of weight underneath, and it's run quite happily ever since. So again, I'll pass that round, and that's what we're looking at. You can see most of the stanchions aren't touching the sole bars, it's just a packing piece underneath one of them. It's crude, but it works. Now, I bought this one for £1. Painted a horrible shade of green. I've now painted a horrible shade of bauxite, but it's a work in progress. That, the axles and the sole bars have been built correctly. When you look at the body, the body has got a terrible twist on it like this instead. But hey, you know, it runs, it doesn't wobble and what have you. And again, when it's going round upstairs, it's not overly noticeable. So I'm focusing on build your chassis square, but on occasion just pay a bit of attention what's going on with the body. As I said, I'll pass that down. You can see what it's like, but I work on the basis if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's good enough for what I want it to do. Now, another common thing that you get with kit built wagons as well is splayed axle boxes. Where basically when you finish the wagon, instead of the axle boxes being vertical, they're splayed over to one side. Now, there's various things that can cause that. In itself, it's not a problem. It's a visual thing if you're picking up and looking at a wagon like this. But other than that, it doesn't really matter. But if it does offend you, or even if the axle boxes are splayed like that, the wheels don't go round, then it's simply a case of prise the bearings out and going with the dentist burr or a drill like I described before, drill a bit more depth in the axle box and then re-glue the bearing in or whatever, and that should give you some play in the axle that the wheels will go around. If you drill through the end of the axle box, which I do on occasion, there's one of these wagons on the table here that drill through the axle boxes. It's not that one. Don't worry about it. Just stick a bit of milliput in it. Do as I do and do nothing. Just leave it because nobody ever notices anyway. Or the other thing, where they had cast axle boxes, they started to change them over to fabricated ones made out of steel plate, and they just have a square flat front on them of steel plate. So you just put a square of plastic card over the top of it and convert it into a plate axle box. But I reckon one of the things that causes this actually, somebody said before, you can build a parkside wagon kit in about 4 hours and it's on its wheels other than the painting. But I think that's where some of the problems come from, that people build them, put them on the wheels, and it actually takes about 24 hours for the solvent to fully harden. Although it all seems robust and you can handle it, it's not hardened. If you stand it on its wheels overnight, you can get the thing will splay like that. So what I always tend to do is build the chassis like that, put it on its back. I might build the body as well, it's like that, but I'll leave it on its back for 24 hours before I put it on the right way up. Now again, on occasion, you find that works against you, because what happens, the solvent's still eating away by very minuscule amounts. It actually sucks the sole bars in and the axle boxes in like this, so it then becomes a little bit tight. So you either got, if it's plastic, bend the axle boxes and hope it stays bent and doesn't recover its original configuration. And again, out with the dentist burr and just take a cat's whisker of plastic out of the axle boxes, or just change the bearings over to a bearing that's a bit deeper, that allows the thing to run a bit more smoothly. So that's why you have a selection of bearings, and again, they're not hard to come by. You can get them at any decent model railway show, or Jim at the loco should stock all this sort of stuff at Presswich. So that covers building it square. The second thing I said about was weighting the wagon. And again, this is where people go wrong. You've seen the cattle wagon there with plasticine in it. I've seen all sorts of stuff used for weighting wagons over the years. That's a 3H kit. That came with a little metal weight in it 50 years ago. So why they can't do that now, I don't know. But when I first started building wagons in earnest under Phil Taylor's influence in around about 1980, 1981, the only published works on doing these things was effectively in the Model Railway News, or Model Railways, or whatever, the MAP publication. And the likes of Bob Essery and people like that were writing in there about what they had done with Hetman White P4. And they're saying everything needed to be compensated, because if you didn't compensate it, it's a plastic wagon kit, it would distort and the running would deteriorate. Well, I have to say, I took that on board, but anything that I built over the last 40, 45 years, it's never distorted. And Jeff Kent says the same in his plastic wagon books as well. But the other thing they said, overweighting, was to weight the wagon to a weight of 4 ounces. You know, a quarter of sweets in old money. And I built this, and I weighted it to 4 ounces. It weighs a ton. I never turned the wheel in anger on the way out. And as you can see, it's compensated as well. And I thought to myself, particularly with the type of locomotives you could get 40 years ago or whatever, this isn't the way forward. So I use things like old second-hand ready-to-run weights along metal strips in kit-built wagons. That's out of I don't know if it's Airfix or whether it's Triang actually. And then I started using lead sheet. Now, I built a load of wagons for Dewsbury Midland 24 years ago, and then I never built anymore. I built locomotive kits as well, until I got fed up with building locomotive kits around about 2015 and 2016. I thought, I've got all these wagon kits. I was thinking I'm going to have to sell them on the bring and buy stall at the club and get threepence eighty for them. And I thought, hang on you muppet, you've got all these... threepence eighty and a quid goes to the club, I hasten to add. That's not a dig, Peter. I thought, hang on you muppet, you've got all these couplings that people have given you, you've got all these wheels that people have given you, you've got all these Humbrol paints that people have given you, and just as an aside, whatever will our children think when we shuffle off this mortal coil and say, have you seen how many tins of Humbrol 33 matte black we've got? Whatever did we need all these tins of matte black for? Anyway, I digress. So I got fed up with building loco kits. I thought, I've got all these wagon kits, I've got all the wheels, I've got all the bearings, I've got loads of transfers I've acquired over the years, second hand for like 50p where somebody's cut half a dozen numbers out of sheets and what have you. I'll build them. So I set to and I built about 300 wagons. It gets infectious, but I thought I need to sort out building wagons like this on an industrial scale, what weight I'm going to do them. So I weighed some Batman wagons and they're about 27 grams. Wife has a fancy digital kitchen scale, you see. So basically, I weight my wagons to 27 grams now and it worked perfectly. Now, in terms of weighting them, once you've got that idea in your head, 27 grams is how you get there, is up to you. But the one thing I would say is do not use liquid lead, this minuscule lead shot. Simple reason being, you say the stuff to glue it with is PVA adhesive. And you use PVA adhesive, the acetic acid reacts with the lead white rust, it expands just like Mazak expands in Hornby class 31s and Heljan class 47s or whatever, and it will burst your wagon apart. And the other thing that I sometimes see with second-hand wagons is people using Airfix glue, polystyrene cemented glue, this stuff, and you imagine what it does to the wagons. It distorts them terribly because it just probably eats away at them for about 12 months or something like that. So what I use is either lead strip, or if it's a van or something like that, you can glue nuts and bolts in there, pieces of steel rod or whatever, providing it's central, that the weight is evenly distributed to get to this 27 grams. But my favourite is to use lead sheet, and if you're thinking, well, where do I get lead sheet from? Place in Earlham, Lancaster Roofing Supplies, Fairholds Road at Earlham, he'll sell you a foot length of lead flashing material, and it ain't cheap, but it'll do the job. It's a lot cheaper than buying Batman wagons, and I can tell you something. But as you can see, I keep all the little offcuts because they're handy for stuffing into nooks and crannies. So where do you put that weight? Well, if it's a van, it's a piece of cake. You just glue it inside. If it's an open wagon, things get a little bit more tricky. So, but first of all, let's have a look at gluing it inside. There's a press flow here, or press round. The weight of the wagon with the lead on this little piece of lead takes it to 27 grams. I'm going to super glue it in there with this thick super glue. But what I don't want is the weight coming loose in the wagon subsequently. So I've cross-hatched it with that Stanley knife that I'm telling you not to use because you'll cut the ends of your fingers off, and I've cross-hatched the floor of the wagon as well. In fact, that's not the best one to show you because that's got a scratch-built floor in it. That's the floor must have been missing in the kit. Let's use this one instead. And I then use this thick super glue, and of course by cross-hatching both things, the glue's got a good key and it stays in place. If I was gluing pieces of metal rod inside a van, or I was gluing 20mm across the flats nuts or something like that from a nut and bolt or whatever, I'd use owlite to attach them. You can build a decent cusp edge of adhesive around them to hold the head. Pass that round and have a look at that. Now, open wagons, they become a little bit more tricky. If it's a loaded coal wagon, you just bung it on the floor and then you put your false coal load over the top of it. You do the same with open wagons, and this is the ratio 3 pointlets. For some bizarre reason, didn't have a plank floor. So I've actually glued the lead weight there on the top, but you've then got to conceal it with something like a container. And if you say to me, but you shouldn't be using the speed freight container, they're offloaded with forklift trucks, so if there wasn't a speed freight conflat, you've got to put it in a 3 plank where you could drop the sides down and get in there with a forklift truck. I don't think I need to pass that one around actually, that's quite straightforward. But if it's a wagon where the inside of the wagon is visible, sometimes it can be quite straightforward, like this. Coal wagon with Malcom brake gear, again another second-hand wagon that's a work in progress, so it's dead easy to get a weight in. You get onto things like airfix kits or this parkside kit for a pipe wagon, you've got to look a bit more creative where you put the lead sheet. But that's basically all that there is to that. Establish the weight and establish what material you're going to use it, and then make sure the thing is glued solidly. I've actually used sticky pads as well before now that they used to stick number plates onto stick things inside vans. So we come to couplings. Well, what a nightmare that is. Dewsbury Midland, the first exhibition was December 1999, the Manchester show. As of April, Easter that year, we'd hardly any freight stock for it. We'd got coaching stock, but no freight stock. In the interim, I built something like about 42 16-ton mineral wagons for it, and various other kit-built wagons. In total, something around about 70 kit-built wagons. I'd also got ready-to-run chassis by Airfix and what have you that had reclaimed off other people who had cut the couplings off, intending to put some other sort of homebrew or fine-scale, in inverted commas, coupling system on them. And I thought, what am I going to do over this? And Bachmann, very thankfully, brought out, they just introduced the little miniature tension lock couplings that they were doing. Now I know they're not everybody's cup of tea, but what an awful lot of people use, and they were selling the couplings separately. So I went to Pennine Models at Haworth, who in those days was a Bachmann distributor before he fell out with them like he falls out with everybody. And I hope this isn't going on YouTube, I'm being sued. And bought a lot of these packets of couplings off him, and that was problem solved. The way to attach them to the model, there weren't any NEM moulded coupling pockets like there are nowadays to take NEM coupling boxes. So it's basically a case of pack the floor up underneath the wagon, drill through them with something like a 0.9mm drill, and then put a trap pin through them to anchor the thing in place, and again using our old friend, the thick, runny super glue. Basically the super glue holds the thing in place and stops it rotating. What the pin does is it makes sure that the coupling never comes adrift from the wagon again. And everything they've done with that method on Dewsbury Midland, they've had some rough handling over the years. I've never had a coupling come off a wagon. I've lost a couple of hooks sometimes, and as well as running on Dewsbury Midland, certainly the coal wagons have been on every exhibition that Dewsbury Midland has ever done. They've also run on Charwelton as well, which is actually a more grueling layout to operate than Dewsbury Midland. Again, never had any problems with couplings. But nowadays, the manufacturers make it easier for us because they give us these little blocks to mount the tension lock couplings. Now, there's two types. I either use the straight couplings, which my preference is the mini straight couplings or the short straight couplings as they're called. They do three lengths, they do short, medium and long. I use those where I'm using the coupling blocks, and you either have to pack the coupling block up or occasionally file it to get the couplings to the height where you want them. And again, I just use a ready-to-run model as a guide. I don't use any fancy gauge or anything like that. But they also do these crank couplings, which were the ones that they originally introduced, and they step down, and using those on Airfix wagons and things like that. He says looking around for an Airfix wagon that's been fitted with one, if they're fitted immediately beneath the headstock, beneath the buffer beam or whatever, they're automatically at the right height. So what I do with the Airfix wagons is get my trusty friend the curve bladed craft knife, and just carve off this circular boss for the plastic coupling, and then mount the backman coupling straight onto that, and it's job done. So again, if you have a look at that, you can compare there the end that hasn't been carved up with the Best Blue Peaches edition one I did earlier, where I cut the bits off. And while we're at it, I'll pass around the other sole bar that goes with it. So the right hand of the sole bar, when you're looking at the inside, that's as it's come from Airfix with the oval hole, and there's also like a rectangular boss moulded on the inside of the W line. And the sorry, I'm saying it's my right hand, it's your left hand when you're looking at it. And then the right hand axle guard, I've removed the rectangular boss, opened out the bearing hole with the dentist spurt, and then countersunk it as well. So it goes with that chassis. But what we need to look at is one that's finished. So I passed the press flow wagon round before. There's another one. As you can see, press flow wagon. That's what they've done. They mounted direct onto the old Airfix pattern bosses. What have I got with the mounting block? Right, yeah. And there's a wagon with the these coupling blocks that you can get to mount. In fact, there's a coupling block as well. Now, the plastic bag up pass round, there's some grey ones in there. They were made by Chippers Fine Lines. They are superbly engineered. The Parkside ones are a bit hit and miss. That on occasion the coupling will drop out with vibration. Whatever you do, don't super glue the coupling in, because these NEM coupling boxes, they can break, and the coupling can break loose. And if you've glued it in, you'll never get the thing out again. So what I do instead is use a tiny little, like about a third the size of a grain of rice, of blue tack, and tamp that down into the Parkside coupling block that then takes the NEM coupling blocks. And doing that, the coupling never falls out again. It's a bit like using thread lock or Loctite or something on it, but if you do break the coupling, you can then dismantle it through the screwdriver. In fact, I'm sorry, I want to pass these round. I haven't done. You can see there the little thing with blue tack and the type of couplings that we're talking about. So the only other thing really to be said over the couplings is where you position them, how far do they overhang the wagon. And what I generally do is position the end of them so that the bar on the coupling is just slightly ahead of the buffer. That works perfectly well on the curves at Dewsbury Midland, and it's worked well on tighter curves. But obviously, if you've got very tight curves at home or whatever, and you feel that's too close, then just move them out a bit more. But again, it's just a very easy thing for me to do, to have locked in the head to position the front bar, the coupling just slightly ahead of the buffers. So that's how I build it square, that's how I sort the weight out, and that's how I sort the couplings out. There's plenty to have a look at here. Obviously other coupling systems are available. It's a case of what works for me. This is what works for me, and in my mind it's the fastest way to get things going. But I mean, there are other options as well as using the these modern backman couplings. You can use the old Airfix couplings that were similar to the modern backman couplings from 1975. Those are very, very good. I've got Wagons here on the table that are fitted with them. And the other thing, of course, is that backmen also do the couplings to replace the older style tension lock, where it's screwed down onto like a goalpost with two prongs at either end. And again, a lot of wagons used to have these goalpost mounting things for tri-and type couplings in the kit. So one of those aforementioned LMS 5 points there from 3H. You can see what I've done there. I've just used the screw-on type couplings glued on. But with regard to couplings, I hoover them up from people like P4 models and what have you that discard these things. The 10th little stretch far and wide. I went to the Engage Society thing the other Thursday, the bloke comes up to me, gives me a plastic bag with a load of couplings in it. He said, there you go. He says, they've been bringing these for about 6 months, meaning to give them you. They've been in my pocket and forgotten. I buy them when I see them second hand in little plastic bags at swap meets, and I'm bringing them by stores at exhibitions and what have you. But that is basically what I have built up, couplings wise, over the years. If somebody's embarking on building some wagons, I can give you some couplings. The only thing you can say is I won't be giving you the short ones, because those are what I use as treasure them. But I mean, of course, I didn't know I had all this stuff till we came to move housing. The thing was the boxes and boxes of conflats that I built. I've got something like about 30 odd conflats. So, just moving on from that, while the brew gets ready, we'll say a little bit about wheels. And I had some brand new wheels to show you, but they're there. I don't know, like I said, I don't know what had happened to them. The other thing that's been a bugbear is wheels. Now, the old Jackson wheels that you bought 40 years ago that went in the brass bearing cups, they were always round. I've never come across one that doesn't wobble. But it then got sold. I don't know who owned Jackson's originally, whether it was Mr. Jackson, whether it was W&H Models, whether it was Eames or something like that. It was then sold to this Mark of Markets, and he produced the wheels and rebranded them as Romford with pinpoint axles. And I've had terrible trouble with them over the years that they're not concentric, that they wobble. And I said about this to H&A Models that Stafford showed to weeks ago, where I bought some of the new Pico wheels off him, and he said, when he brought the business, the guy that owned Jackson's apparently didn't give him all the tooling and equipment, and this was why his wheels wobbled. And he said he's now got all the tooling and equipment and his wheels don't wobble any longer. I thought, well, I should hope they don't, the price they are nowadays. But I've used wheels from all over the show, and again, a bit shocked to find when I look. That is all the wheels that have accumulated. Now, the easiest way to get wheels is buy something like this from Hornby or from Bachman. I did have some Bachman ones. I don't know what they've done with them, but hang on, there's loads under here, like this, and test them for wobbling. And the way I test them for wobbling is I have a control wagon, which is, I think I might have passed it round. Whether I've passed it round.
Some here.
Is it all
Go
good?
No, it should be. It should be on here. Isn't that bizarre? Here, it usually knows somewhere. Well, here it is. What I use is an old ratio 5 plank. The weight goes at one end. The weight goes at one end, where the blue tack is, and I have an axle at the other end that I know that is true, that is like control. So I never change that axle unless I drop it on the floor and they spring out. And what I do is I put some weight at one end, I clip a wheel in like this, and roll it on a flat surface to see whether it shimmies or not. And quite simply, that tells me whether the wheel set's any good or not. And if it shimmies, I reject it. I'm actually quite pedantic. My particular brand of autism or whatever is that I don't like wobbling wheels that wobbles. I reject it. But if you do wobble, all is not lost, and that's why I've got such a large box of wheels there. Because if you do wobble, I found if you get a pile of wheels that wobble, all from one brand, and you're bored one wet Saturday afternoon or whatever, pull all the wheels off one end of the axles, mix them all up, and then put the wheels back onto axles, and of course invariably they won't go on the same axle. And I find out of this pile of wobbly wheels that I have, I might have 50% then that run true. Some wobble worse than before, obviously. Some wobble just the same, but some do run true. But my preferred wagon wheels for many years was the Bachman brass turn wagon disc wheels, which didn't have holes in them for 3-hole discs, but because they didn't wobble, they worked very well. And I also found the Bachman split spoke wheels, they seem commendably free of wobbling, but the 3-hole discs used to wobble, and some of the spoke ones did. But basically, if I see a gash wagon at a swap meet or an exhibition, something like this tube wagon that I got for Rutland Models near Rill, it was £1 or £2. If you've got 2 lots of Jackson wheels in it, a Romford wheels in it, I buy it to see whether the wheels are round or not. And that's where I source my wheels. I either buy them, cadge them from the M&P4 gauge modelers, or I go around the exhibitions and what have you, looking for what's out there with decent wheels in it, or what potentially might be decent wheels in it that are cheap. The thing that I've had the most problem with, though, wheels-wise, is plastic-centred wheels. MGW wheels used to come in 3H kits and things like that. They wobble, and if they don't wobble when you build a wagon, my experience is they wobble after a few years, so it must be the plastic distorts or something like that. I've not had much success with Alan Gibson wheels either, and possibly Parkside haven't under Pico's regime, because that was what they were offering originally, and now they put their own wheels in it. So, but anyway, that's really all I've got to say about wheels. It's just basically keep your eyes open and build some stocks. We'll touch on the different sizes of wheels later on when I look at retreading compensated wagons. Anyway, it's 20 past. Are we right for the brew, Ralph?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, right. Well, I'll carry on then. 5 minutes. And I'll say a little bit about compensation. Now, I don't bother with compensation myself, with the exception of Airfix brake vans instead of breaking off a brake shoe, where the very long wheelbase on them seem to have come across a fair number of these that wobble over the years. I did use compensation when I first started, using proprietary compensation units like this, but I don't bother now. As I say, it was all the rage 41 years ago when I started building wagons. But one of the things I have noticed with compensation units over the years is that you put the same size wheels in them, and the wagon doesn't sit with the wagon body or the sole bars parallel with the track. It kicks up at one end where the compensated axles are. So what I've done to allow for that is I started measuring wheels with a vernier and putting a big wheel at the fixed end and a smaller wheel at the rocking end, and that brings it from being on the angle like that to coming down flat again. So again, if I pass another of those pesky 3H models LMS 5-plank wagons round from 50 years ago, this one from the late Colin Randalls, I see, looking at the initials that are put underneath it. What I've got at one end is a Hornby solid disc wagon wheel, which is 12.7mm diameter, and I've got a Bachmann turn brass solid wagon wheel at the other end, which is about 12mm, and it's brought the thing back down level. Colin's obviously building them compensated for P4. Now, I bought a couple of brake vans off people in the club that have been professionally built from Airfix kits before you could get the Bachmann model, and they were expensive, but they never ran properly, they derailed, and they've got plastic centred metal tired wheels from leading manufacturers on them, so I junked those. But the other thing, again, we're back to this business of the axles weren't parallel like that, so using the Dremel, the craft knife and what have you, I cored out the ends of the axle boxes at one end and put a compensation unit in, and that cured it, that they ran properly. So this is an old Airfix brake van that I'm in the process of retreading, and I've compensated it at one end. I say I'm in the process of retreading it, it's probably been like this for 10 years. But if you know how to do stuff and build stuff properly, this I reckon is probably about 60 years old, going by the colour of the plastic. It runs beautifully. It's the old Jackson wheels on those brass cut bearings I was telling you about, and it was built by David Getgood of this society, which some of you probably remember David more associated with the large scale trams that we used to have at the exhibitions. So it shows it is possible to build an Airfix brake van with a rigid chassis, and it's square and it doesn't rock and what have you, but I have to admit defeat. I've never managed it. I compensate them instead. But I mean, I could probably do a talk about wheels on its own or whatever, but I won't do. As I say, the thing is just check for squareness. Now, H&A Models that specialises in wagon kits was telling me at Stafford Show, I said, I hear that Pico are doing their own wheels now, but I can't find any reference to them on the internet or anywhere. He said, oh, we've got them. He said, they're in all the kits now. And he said they're made out in the Far East. I see Peter Spares has started selling his own wheels made in the Far East as well. So I bought a couple for evaluation. They ain't cheap, they're £2.50 each. inflation, I dare say if you're buying a lot of them though, you get them cheaper. But I have to say, I think it's some of the best wagon wheels that I've ever seen in double O. To me, they look as good as the ultra scale wheels that they use in the finer scales, which ultra scale was a byword for quality. And again, I'll pass these round, but I've tested them on that test wagon. They're absolutely straight and true, straight as a die. So I think that's possibly the way forward if you can afford it. But I won't give up just yet on buying this old second-hand rubbish and seeing what you can get from them, because for the price order I found it to be rich pickings. £2.50 an axle. But the thing is, you buy the Parkside kit though with those in, most of them are under a tenner. There's an LMS brake van that Batman do, that was about 20 quid. A couple of the longer wheelbase fans that they do, CCT and made fish fans whatever, were 15 quid, but from what I could see, the vast bulk of the range was £9.95. And they got those wheels in with them, and there's something vis-a-vis 30 quid.
Yeah.
It's a steal.
Yeah.
It's a steal. How are we doing now, Ralph? Are we good to go? Right, well if we adjourn there, I'll put the lights on upstairs for anybody that wants to have a look. On the layout upstairs I've got all the kit, the exhibition wagon stock for Dewsbury Midland is underneath the layout stuff that I provide, and I've fished all the kit built wagons out of it on Monday, and you can see the amount of Airfix mineral wagons up there. And one thing I can tell you with all those Airfix mineral wagons, which there's 30 odd of them, there's not a single one of those has come out of a box of Virgin kit. They're all ones that are bought second hand and disassembled. And I've kept the box ones thinking, I'll build those last, but if I ever get fed up of building mineral wagons, I can flog them because they're virgin and untouched. But I've been working from home and using this as a computer stand. I haven't really taken any notice what was on the box, and then it said 16 tonner kits and Batman 9-foot wheelbase chassis at scale 4, Dave Clark. And I opened the thing out of curiosity, and oh my god, there's 16 ton mineral wagons in there, and they're all Airfix ones that are disassembled to reassemble. I'm thinking, I've probably got about 90 of these things now, all already built, and there's something like about 30 odd upstairs. There's about 3 or 4 Cambrian ones to break it up, and there's a couple of Parkside funnies like the slope-sided mineral wagon, the one with the cupboard doors that they built for the French railways, and there's a few Parkside fitted ones at the head of the mineral wagon train as well. So I think I'm going to have to be doing some serious selling or giving away of unbuilt kits. Right, should we get this brew?
Yep. Thanks, Malcolm.
Right, I'm upstairs.
still get them much cheaper in Shanghai.
It's got the grasses in it.
Shall I?
The grasses I'm worried about.
Shall I start, Ralph? Shall I wait for you to sit down?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Right, well, seconds out, round two then. Propose to do in round two, just have a little bit of a look at some of these models and talk a bit about painting and detailing and cross-kitting. But first of all, if I've inspired some of you to have a go and you think, well, it's alright for him or whatever, years of experience and everything, I've still got some of my original stuff. The first wagon I ever built was a Airfix cattle wagon about 1974. That's the remains of it. Had the Airfix plastic wheels and what have you, the Airfix couplings, which if you remember, these were connected with a rubber band and what have you. But the paint, I used Humbrol freight stock bauxite from their authentic colours range, and being a mere stripling of 14 or whatever, hurry to get things done, I didn't stir it properly. So as a result of which I painted the wagon mainly with linseed oil with a bit of tan pigment in it, so it came out glossy. But I'd kept it for many years, and then moving house or whatever, I've broken all the body off and thrown it away, just kept the chassis to keep the buffer beams as spares. If I'd known to doing it all like this, I'd have hung on to it. But we have to start somewhere, so that's the first one, 1974. Now, I've never built another cattle wagon since, until about 6 weeks ago, and it's a bit of a beggar to build actually, because with these opening doors in the middle of it, if you're not careful, the bodywork sags down towards the doors, even if you build the chassis square. So that was number one. Number two was a brake van, which in the 1970s Airfix and their infinite wisdom moulded in bright red plastic, and I painted that with this self-same Humbrol Railways enamel, authentic colour enamel, but this time I stirred it. But being in a hurry to get things done, and I needed to cover the bright red plastic over it, I put such a thick sludgy coat onto it that again, it looked an abortion, but it did get finished. The roof was painted, the concrete blocks on the platforms at the end, it had the Airfix transfers on and what have you. But again, all I've got left of that really is a sole bar and a couple of doors as which I can't even remember now where I've kept those spare parts. It may just be that I disassembled it and I threw the rest of it away, and these were the bits I didn't throw away. So that was about 1975. So a guy called Ron Prattley in 1977 or thereabouts wrote an article in Model Railway Mother, I should say, about taking a Hornby LNER, it's branded NE I think, refrigerator van, which was a Horn Barnsley Railway design, and he mounted it on a Pico Wonderful Wagons underframe with Pico Wonderful Wagons wheels and Pico Wonderful Wagons hard-on bearings. So the next wagon that I had a go at, which was in about 1977, was a 16-ton mineral wagon. So I used these drill axle boxes out, put these hard-on bearings in the thing, put the Pico wagon wheels in it. It's all ran nice and easy because it's dead easy to build an Airfix kit square. The engineering on them is absolutely superb. You know, still as good today, made by Dapple or whatever, 60 odd years on. But I bought a tin of paint for it, which I thought was going to be the right shade of green. As you can see, it's anything like it. It was nothing like what I was seeing at Bickershaw Colliery and what have you. So that one never got any further. And I've disassembled it. The remnants are over here in this plastic bag, ready to be reconstructed. And that was it then for 3 or 4 years, because I was busy chasing girls and doing British motorbikes and drinking Boddington beer and all the other things that young men do in the late teens, early 20s. But the Rainhill 150 celebrations, I bumped into Phil Taylor, not at Rainhill, it was Sankey Brook Viaduct or whatever, and I got chatting with him while we were waiting for either Leander or Princess Elizabeth to come along on one of the specials he used to run on a Sunday between Manchester and Liverpool. And he said, oh yeah, so you're doing a real model? Oh yeah, I'm building wagons. And he's telling me that. I said, that sounds interesting. He said, oh, why don't you come round and have a look? So I went round to his house and he showed me these wagons that he'd built, and I thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it. So I went away, did my research, which led to this thing, the brick weighing 4 ounces, and had a go at building some wagons, probably around about early 1982. And what I built was that from a Slater's kit, that from the 3H kit, which was cockeyed. As I say, that would work, but they were built to air gauge. You had 3-link couplings on them, never ran them. built that from a Cambrian kit, which is compensating. Nice fan. Never done anything at it in the intervening period other than finally put couplings on it about 3 years ago, and I've changed the wheel sets over. It had PC wheels on it, Manchester profile, the M-Gauge Society profile, something like that, fancy, and again they wobbled like mad. Oh, and I built this as well from a Cambrian Models kit, which was a plastic tank and a white metal underframe. Of course, I've no idea in those days about soldering. Nobody could tell me how to white metal solder. It's dead easy actually. So I glued it together with super glue, and it's run around Dewsbury Midland in Charlwelton for 25 years and what have you. Periodically it comes apart slightly at the joints, but it just whops some more super glue on, and it does the job. So that's one that I put couplings on in about 1999, something like that. So as you can see, I went, literally from one extreme to the other. I then had another splurge in 1987. I built some of the mineral wagons upstairs. I built this press wing out of an Airfix kit and had a go at compensating it, but the compensation didn't work very well, so I glued it up rigid, and in 1999 when I came to put some couplings on it, I contrived to bodge some Airfix couplings onto it. Now Batman were going to bring one of these out as a ready-to-run model. It's a slightly different variant, and I'm told it was going to be about 40 quid, and my understanding is they've canned it because they thought nobody would pay that amount of money for a wagon. Well, Dap will do it as a kit for about a tenner or whatever. Builds it perfectly nicely for these original Airfix kits in the little boxes like this. You can still pick them up for five quid, 10 quid at swap meets and what have you. But again, so that's what I was building in 1987, and that's been running since 1999. I built this as well, which was a shock open. Remember building that in 1987. It sticks in my mind because we were on holiday on Anglesey for a week in a caravan at Marion Glass near Bentley, and it did nothing but rain for a week, so much so we came home on the Thursday, but stuck in the caravan or whatever. I did some wagon modelling, and I made this as well, which was an early example of cross-kitting. That started life as a Hornby iron ore wagon on a Hornby tension-locked underframe, crude one-size-fits-all thing that we've been making since trying in about 1966 or whatever. I thought, I can't make an iron ore hopper out of it because I ain't got the right underframe or whatever, so I cut it down and made a sand wagon out of it, and I mounted it on an Airfix 16-ton mineral wagon underframe. So as I say, it literally gone from one extreme to the other over a course of a few wagons, and that's why I say, if you sort of fired up, have a go at it. But this was the other one that I did as well at the time, which again, looking at this, the date underneath it says 5/15. What it means is May 2015 is when I finally got round to putting couplings on it and re-gauging it to 00 from the M-gauge, having built the thing in 1981. Now that's actually an Airfix van body, the sort that they brought out in 1985 and was a staple of the Great Model Railways range, but it was a crummy underframe on it, which is one there which I've cut the headstocks off. And what I did for this was I built it compensated for the floor. I used an Airfix meat van underframe which just clips straight in, and that's why I've got that dilapidated thing there. Again, it's come from under a box under a stall somewhere. I thought I'll have that, I'll convert another of those wagons, and it gives me a couple of buffer beams as well. I've used the Airfix sole bars, but because everything else off, I'm actually looking at it, they might even be Cambrian sole bars, because Cambrian kits used to give you two different lengths of sole bars with them. But I've compensated it, and the axle box detail, the correct OMS J-hanger suspension and short brake lever, it's all made out of these components, Kenline, and they're probably around about 40-50 years old. Well, look at that one, the price is 16p, the price on this is 44p, the price on that one 38p. But you can still get this stuff today because there's loads of people out there like me that have never done anything with it. And a very good source of it is at our exhibition, CMS Models, Terry Smith, that as well as doing his big O-gauge locomotives that are mega bucks that are professionally built and what have you, he acquires a lot of this sort of stuff in collections, and he can't shift it, so he brings it to our show because he shifts it at our show. So as I say, even though this stuff's long been out of production, you can get it. Now as I say, I built that one compensated. Subsequently, I stopped building compensation, so there's exactly the same thing again, still with the Kenline axle guards, and brake gear, but this time they are solid white metal axle guards, which I have some, oh, here we are, they're staring me in the face in this plastic bag. So they're like that are just glued onto the sole bar. So now I'm in the realms of making my own kits, as it were, with bits of this and bits of that. This is what it's about. Kit built wagon building.
Wagons.
And again, you get into this cross-kitting and what have you. There's stuff that's out there. Buffers, dead easy to come by. Lanarkshire models, either mail order or you get them at exhibitions and what have you. I think I got these at Expo North or something like that. So we've got 1 foot 8 inch Doughty 13 inch round-headed buffers there, fitted to wagons and vans and some BR brake vans. Just a standard wagon buffer there that's self-contained, that are used on press flows, conflats, bananas, shocks, opens. Oleo buffers, early pneumatic buffer, that's exactly the same buffer that is used on those Airfix press wing wagons. Not that those have got white metal buffers on them, they've got the plastic ones, but what I'm saying is they're exactly the same sort of buffer. So there's loads of stuff out there. These are about £2 or £3 a packet. You can use the old brass buffers like this, which again, you know, they might seem a bit crude compared to castings, but once they're on a wagon and they're painted black, such as this one here, they're fine, they do the job, you'll not break them off. Now, there's lots of people that know that, as I said earlier, they change the buffers to metal as a matter of course. I don't. I'll use plastic buffers all day long, and if they break off, I just replace them. But basically, I've got more wagons than they've actually got buffer beams and buffers, would you believe? So that's why I've been buying the white metal ones. And MJT, who come to York as well, they do buffers. So there's plenty of stuff out there for doing it, and there's plenty of stuff to be picked up for buttons second hand. Wizard Models, he's another source, and he does things like roll bearing axle boxes that have got there, steel buffer heads, so you break the buffer head off, you can drill through it and put a plastic buffer housing and put a steel one in, and there we've got 15-inch buffer heads and 13-inch buffer heads, I think it is. £2 for the axle boxes, £4.50 for the packets of buffers. So there's plenty of stuff out there that you can use. So just looking at a few of these other models, what's out there. That's a Saxa salt wagon that I bought second hand for about £4, and all I've done is put couplings on it. Not weathered it, not done anything. A very nice model. And of course, being a British Railways modeller, there's not many private owner wagons that you can have, but that is one of them. And the beauty of this is it's the right size, where the Batman Ready to Run one is actually too large. It's been scaled up to fit a longer chassis. Brake vans we've had a look at. White metal wagons, I've touched on the Cambrian oil tank wagon. This I got at this Terry Smith at our 2015 exhibition, the first one in the Barnes Wallace building. It was £8. I say it didn't have couplings on it, it had sprung 3-link couplings, so nobody's interested in it. Early LMS van built from a Airfix kit. It's a beautiful model, it was already painted, all lettered and everything. The only thing I've done is put the tension lock couplings on, as we said before, which have actually glued them onto those moulded coupling pockets and away. And again, it's something none of the Ready to Run boys do. It runs beautifully, and it's something different that's in your wagon fleet. This is another interesting one. You can buy the chassis separately for these kits. So if we have a look here, BR made use of quite extensively in the formative years of the LNER pattern of HU class brake gear underneath the wagons. £2.50 Parkside kit. At Staffordshire, I think they've gone up to about £5 now. Now whether that includes the wheels as well nowadays, I don't know. So you can buy an old kit in a box and recon the chassis if you want. They also do this kit, which is for the LMS, British Railways LMS fitted brake gear with 8 shoes, and they do 200 frames in here actually for the £2.50 or £5, whatever they are now. They do an LMS variant and a British Railways variant as well. So you can actually build the LMS under a LMS van like this, and then the BR variant I can put under something like this low fit one plank wagon, so you get 2 for the price of 1. Or again, if you're going around swap meets and bring and buys at exhibitions, you can buy 5 of them for £1.50, where somebody's used all the LMS chassis and flogged the BR ones. And then latterly, British Railways introduced their own design of HU class vacuum brake gear, used on Comfarts, low fits, banana vans, this sort of thing and what have you. These are made by Red Panda. These used to be quite cheap, but I bought this one at Stafford Show. It's £9.45, which actually seems to have gone up disproportionate by other stuff, but I think H&A Models, that does all the wagon kits, they bought it. But it's a beautiful chassis, it's a work of art, and when it's built up, it's every bit as good as anything you're going to get from Rapido or Accurascale. Now, one of the things I've been interested in is banana vans. Never seen them running revenue earning traffic, but there used to be quite a few knocking about as departmental vans in the 70s and 80s. Possibly because they were more modern than everything else and in better condition, or possibly because they're actually a better built van. Now, for 65 years, you've been able to get a Hornby Double super detailed body, and they are super detailed, spot on. Nowadays, it's done by Dapple. It passed through Wren. This is a Wren one that I bought in about 1981 from a model shop that's closing down. And what I've done is the old die-cast underframe. I put that under some mainline van bodies which were wrong anyway. The kids have played with them, and then I've sold them at our exhibitions on the bring and buy stand. But the actual body itself, I glued a piece of plastic card in the floor because it has a hole in the middle, so that black that you can see there is a piece of plastic card. Fitted it on one of these brake gears, which is the correct brake gear. Put some Model Master transfers on it and put the tension lock couplings. It is a beautiful, highly detailed model. You can buy these van bodies for £1.67 from Hattons. They've got 10 of them in. Last week you've got them all a while. I dare say buy them from Dapple as well. You get the chassis from H&A Models for a tenner. You can get the wheels, as we've seen, for £5 from H&A Models for the pair. Beautiful wheels. And the couplings are a couple of quid with the transfers. You're probably looking about 15 quid all in, and that is a model that will hold its own with Accurascale or Rapido, these modern manufacturers that have come on the market. So this is the sort of thing that you can do. Looking at a few others here, this was one I built in the 1980s, Ian Kirk fruit van, and I actually mounted it because I needed some wagons fast for Wheatstone Bridge, the predecessor to Dewsbury Middle, in about 1987. I mounted it on an Airfix van chassis, which wasn't correct. So in latter years I've ripped the chassis off and put it under something that it was correct for, and this was just a body knocking about until 2016. And again, what I've done here is bought one of these LNER underframe kits for £2.50 and mounted it under the wagon that now has the correct underframe. So this is what I'm saying. Generally, it's very rare that stuff is salvageable. That it isn't salvageable. You need to put a new underframe on it. But that's what I did there. We've seen the press flow wagons. I've passed those round. That's another Ian Kirk kit from the 1980s, where they're different underframe underneath it. Funny enough, I think it actually had that Airfix one that we've seen with the buffer stocks cut off it. And again, at Scale 4 North a few years ago, Dave Clark, I seem to buy lots of stuff from Dave Clark, seems to have a high turnover of stuff. I can see Tony there. Well, he does have a high turnover of stuff, doesn't he? He was selling these ratio wagon underframes for £1. And of course he's carved them all the way to put Alex Jackson couplings in and what have you. So glued some pieces of plastic card on the floorways, carved them up, mounted the tension lock couplings and put it underneath its LNER van body from 1987. It is actually correct because again, the wartime, they were built during the war. Various other people built them, like the LMS and what have you. They didn't put LNER underframes on them. So now you'll notice that some of the vans have got quite light coloured roofs, and we'll come to that when we get on to painting. This is a Bachmann low fit, which again has the wrong underframe with it, as it comes from Bachmann or Mainline or whatever. So I've robbed the underframe, put it under something else, and I've used one of these where you get 2 for the price of 1 in the kit, the BR variant underneath it. And again, to weight the wagon, instead of gluing lead sheets on it, I've screwed a Series 1 Land Rover on it from Oxford diecast. So this, the swap meets, there has been loads and loads and loads of dapple conflat bodies floating about. Now this has been my nemesis, because when I've come to move 6 months ago and look at what I've actually got, I seem to have about 30 odd conflat wagons, and they're 50p each. So I've been buying them, finding a slight recess in the body over the chain pocket lids, which is what British Railways did. A lot of them have put just a conventional 4-shoe brake gear, but again using these H&A models kits, I've built a load with the 8-shoe class brake gear on them as well, just for something different. And again, you can see where I've put the lead sheet on them there, on the underside. So I think we've touched on most things there. This is an interesting one, this little 16-tonner vacuum fitted. I bought it at Bolton Swap Meet, and to weight it, somebody had put plaster of Paris in it. And it was still white, and as it says cured, it has formed a meniscus around the edges. It had a saucer-shaped depression in it. And again, I bought it to get the Romford wheels out of it. It was about £2 or something like that. But I thought, I actually rather like the shape of the colour of the bauxite on there. So I dug the plaster of Paris out, and the other thing it had done was it had splayed the body. Well, of course, mineral wagons, they did used to spread anyway. So I bought it initially to get the wheels. The wheels have gone on something else, but I've retreaded it. And again, all I've done is I've just put a transfer on it that says Col 16 VB, and I put a data patch on it. But I have to say, for some bizarre reason, it's one of my favourite models, and it's £2. Just finally, a few other kits that are available. K's did white metal kits, generally a bit crude by today's standard. One of the ones that they did was a 12-ton pallet van like that, but it ain't a patch on the modern Parkside one. But they also did a pal brick wagon here, and I bought one. In fact, I think it's the only one that I've ever seen. So I rather like pal bricks. I thought, doesn't look right, but then I've seen the KR models pal brick come out, and it looks very much like it actually. Obviously, we're an oddball wagon where they were built on recovered underframes. So I think I'm going to scrap the white metal underframe on it. The sole bars are too far apart, but again, nice model. It was a couple of quid, and in the fullness of time that will get retreaded vis-a-vis the KR models, which I think is about 26 quid or something like that. You've got to order it from him in Canada, unless Rails of Sheffield have got any. And last but by no means least, let's just have a quick look at the Pico tank wagons. Now, this, from what I'm aware of, has been in production all my life in the wonderful Wagons kits. Bit of a departure for Pico, than instead of pre-printed cardboard bodies and what have you, it was all plastic. And basically it's a pretty good representation of a 1938 Air Ministry tank wagon. Now, most of the ready-to-run guys that have done these, they always do it on a cradle chassis, which is quite rare, and I think it's because it's the same wagon that's been regurgitated and retreaded by mainline Batman, somehow acquired by Dapple when it was David Ball, and passed from David Ball to Hornby, and then Replica Railways have made it as well. And they've got quite crude ladders, and as I say, the underframe isn't typical of what you get. This is spot on. Now you can get these as unmade kits in the little light blue boxes for around about 5 or 6 quid, because people buy stuff second hand at swap meets and what, if they're not interested, they don't know what to do with them. But the actual made up wagons, you can get them for a couple of quid or whatever, because invariably the Pico Simplex couplings on them, or 3-link. And I've been buying these up. We've had a tank train on Dewsbury Midland for 24 years now, made up of these that are bought second hand, and the transfers were from these Slater's rectangular tank wagons, Methodix transfers. And all I've done is basically make sure the wheels go round, put some tension lock couplings on them by whatever means, having carried the original couplings off, and to paint them I just simply used a rattle can and matte black cellulose, wafted them over very, very quickly that it doesn't damage the plastic, and then put the transfers on and weathered them. But Pico still make the kit today, and they sort of did a bit of a revamp on it a few years ago with more modern coupling attachments and what have you, and that is one of the more modern ones, and it's still available now. It's a Parkside Dundas, it's now under the Parkside label. Sold them for sale at Stafford a fortnight ago. It's about 19 quid or something like that, and that is a very good model. But again, why pay 19 quid when you can get that one generally for under a fiver with a bit of work, and it's all your own work. as it were. So anyway, time's marching on. Just say a little bit about painting, because it's no use being able to build them nicely if you can't paint them nicely. And the first thing I'd say is, if you're going to paint them, do it your own way or whatever, but my advice is don't paint them bauxite, and don't go by precision paints or something like that. Now, that's precision paints on here with 2 shades of bauxite. That's pre-1965 and that's post-1965, just to make a bit of a difference. I built 15 of these in one hit. I think it was during the lockdown year or something like that. And what I did, the bright yellow plastic, so I got all the underframe components, put them on a piece of hardboard on top of the wheel bin in the garden, and sprayed them over with a rattle can of black cellulose paint. So that was all the underframes done in one hit. There's nothing wrong with brush painting, but it's just slow. And if you've got 15 wagons you want to build and you want to get them painted, well, the weather's conducive to painting outdoors. You've got to get it shufty on a bit. I've then built the bodies, masked off the underframes, and sprayed the bodies with these bauxite colours. Now, I did that unusually for me, just simply because they're press flows. I thought I'll start with something uniform and then work backwards from there with the cement staining. But had they been Vans or whatever, I would have sprayed them with something completely different, which I'll touch on in a minute. But that is the exception rather than the rule for me, to use paint as it comes from the manufacturer. And the reason for that is quite simple. If I can find the book, it's here. I was flicking through this the other day, looking at brush type 4s, and there's a picture there of High Wycombe goods yard, and this is brush type 4 has just shunted that train. It was an overnight express from the home counties to Merseyside and Lancashire, called the Chiltern or something like that, about 1963. Basically, if you could get your merchandise to this goods yard by 5 o'clock, it would be in northwest England by the following morning, ready for collection. And it's making up the train there. And the thing that struck me is, look at the goods yard. There's only one vehicle, which is actually a BD type container, which is in the bauxite livery that we all know and love, and that we get from the red rum manufacturers, and you're seeing on some of my wagons tonight, like that one. The rest of them are all dirty, all various shades of brown, indescribable. I mean, those are all brown vans there, but I mean, to look at it, there isn't really a brown one amongst them, the various shades of grey and black. And likewise on the front cover there, which is Hastings, there's a Slim Jim, as they were called, a narrow-bodied Type 33 making up a train. It's got 2 insulfish vans there at the head of the train. That one's in ice blue and that one's in white, but I mean, they both look black. Yeah. They're dirty. So of course I hit on this idea where batch building wagons and what have you, no point painting them all this colour, because you're going to have to repaint them again afterwards. May as well spray them dirty, something like that. So the reason I use the spray painting again is just for speedway. If I'm doing a lot of them, if I'm doing a one-off wagon, I'll brush paint them. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Providing you stir the paint properly, you'll get a good finish. But what I do with where I'm batch spray painting and what have you, I keep pouring a bit of bauxite in the cup and pour some matte black in, or in the can I put some matte black in the can, and then I mix some more, and I just use all different colours. And the other trick is, as well, is if you've got a filthy van, put a clean roof on it, and if you've got a clean van, put a dirty roof on it, because the way they did the roofs on these things seems to bear no relation to what they do in the bodies, with the bodies. And I think it's because the roofs were felted and the bodies were wood, so you paint the body for protection to smarten it up. But obviously you don't paint a felt roof. But equally, if the felt deteriorates on the roof that the van is then leaking, it goes into shops, has a new roof put on it, and they don't do anything with the body at the time, other than they might do a bit of patch painting if there's some rot or the paint is coming off. But what I would say about painting and weathering is, do it your own way. As long as it satisfies you, don't give a monkeys what anybody else says, because people's weathering and everything varies. There's no right or wrong, just do what you think. I mean, I see a lot of weathering and I think, oh, it looks too dark to me. Well, somebody told me the other day, if you're using acrylic paints, they generally come out darker. I use the old Humbrol because it's what I've grown up with. But as I say, anything goes at the end of the day, as long as you are satisfied with it. But the one thing I would say is, try and copy colour photographs. You'll never copy it exactly, But if you look at what's on the photograph and try and emulate it, you'll end up with something that to your eyes will look pretty realistic. And this is the sort of thing that I do. Coat coppers, there's not many pictures of them in books, so over the years I've been taking pictures out of second-hand magazines. There's no point keeping the magazine or whatever, so I just keep the pictures. But you can see with the coat coppers, if we take that one for example, what happens is the body rusts like mad, as you can see here, but these raids at the top, which are wood, they always seem to be light grey, and I can't weigh up whether they've been painted light grey, like the body. It's just that because it's not affected by a hot coat to the same extent, it hasn't gone off, or whether they're actually unpainted timber that's turned grey as timber does. But I actually think it's that the painting it doesn't go for them. But that's what I try and do, is copy what's on photographs. Now for lettering your vehicles, there's all sorts of stuff available. I use anything and everything. So the original thing that we had were these, which were water slide transfers, and you still see them now. They possibly look a bit crude by comparison with modern offerings. I don't even know who made them, to be perfectly honest. What I do know is about 40 years old, but they're still good to use nowadays. And that little 16-ton mineral wagon that pass around that cost £2 or thereabouts, that's what I've used on those. You've got your Model Master transfers, which you can either order direct from Model Master, or I just wait till I see some second hand. And building some cattle wagons, I went to Bolton Swap Meet the other day, and there was a guy there with second hand transfer sheets for cattle wagons from Model Master, £1 each, and what have you. I mean, frequently they might have some cut out like that, but it doesn't matter, you're never going to use them all anyway. Or the Fox do transfers as well, and Fox, they don't do, I don't think, or they didn't used to do the bespoke numbers, say for gunpowder vans, banana vans, 16-ton mineral wagons, that Model Master did. Instead, you have to make your transfers up out of individual components like you would have done on the prototype. Now, the other one that's available as well is Cambridge Custom Transfers. Now, this was like a homespun business where he was using a transfer sheet that wherever you buy it from and printing himself. They're somewhat delicate, but the other thing with this transfer film, and it might have improved now because it's 10 or 15 years since I bought anything from them, his transfer film was a bit opaque, and if you put it on a matte surface, it didn't like it. You got like a shimmery effect to it where you could see air behind the transfer when it had dried. But if you wanted to do something like a coat hopper, there was no other source of transfers, you have to use these. So, as I say, there's the stuff out there, but again, there's a theme emerging here. It's very rare. I actually pay full price for it. Just wait till I see something and think that'll come in handy. There's plenty of reference sources. We've got all these books in the library. That is invaluable for BR Wagons by Dave Larkin. Or you want to go and look at the prototype and where they're doing it properly, albeit there being varying degrees of weathering, go to Quorn on the Great Central Railway, where they're busy restoring freight stock back to its BR condition and doing it properly. But just a little bit about transfers. To fit them, what else used nowadays is a Humbrol decal fix, and sometimes it'll crinkle all the transfer up like you put paint stripper on it. Don't worry, it'll all flat itself off and go level again within a few minutes as this stuff evaporates. But what it does is it softens the transfer that it goes around detailing, rivet heads and things like that, and again you get rid of this opaqueness that it looks like air is trapped at the back of the transfer. It's a pretty handy thing as well. I got that off HA models the other day. It was £1. I never had one for, I've been knocking Mepac over for 50 years, pushing the boat out, but as you can see, I wouldn't run to buy one of Andy Goodman's in laser cut timber, good as they are or whatever. My way my strange mind works is I think, blimey, that's a bottle of Mepac or whatever. I was flashing out one of those, but I did buy that the other day. But the other thing that I use for weathering, as I use this, precision paints, quick air drying thinners, and again I bought a couple of big cans off HA models at Stafford Showies at Worley. PQ9, he sells the stuff, you use it to let your paint down for spray painting. And the reason you use that rather than white spirit is because it dries like that when it's gone through the airbrush. You use white spirit, you can be talking 5 to 10 minutes before the solvent evaporates, during which time, if it's a van, and you put it on its wheels like that, the pigment can actually drop down through the paint to the bottom of the van with gravity. If you want to build thick coats up, you wait an awful long time in between coats, where with this, particularly if it's a sunny day and you hold it up to the sun, you're waiting about a minute between coats. But it's also invaluable for weathering because it dries quickly. And again, I use my old friend the milk bottle top. Get some on the end of a brush like this, just put a little dab in a milk bottle top, put a bit of this in from a pipette, just to thin it down slightly. Get a broad brush like this, you want a broad brush, not a narrow one, and just streak it down the side of the van, in between the stanchions. Or if it's a mineral wagon or something like that, just streak it down, a couple of passes on the panels either side of the doors, and then one on the doors. And because it dries so quickly, you can see how much dirt you're putting on. You think, oh blimey, I put too much on. Use your thumb or a kitchen roll or whatever, and just rub it off, but it runs it in between the planks and what have you. I use a thinner brush, an artist brush, to pick up things like strapping on the vehicles in matte black. The ends again, I'll just daub it with a broad brush like this. I'll pick up the metal plates on the end and what have you. And it's a very quick way of weathering to get effects like this. And as I say, if you don't like it, you can see what's happening. You use white spirit as well. Not there's a great deal of difference in price, because a big can of this is about 11 quid. You go to B&Q, a bottle of white spirit nowadays is about 8 or 9 quid or whatever. You go to Travis Perkins, about 3 or 4 quid for the self-same thing. But
have you used the Humbrol in other things?
Sorry?
Have you used the Humbrol in other
Possibly. I never used it, because if I find something that works, I tend to stick with it.
I think that's better than white spirit, isn't
it? The thing is, with this, if say you're doing mineral wagons, and you've seen mineral wagons, how they rust, and basically it's like a spot on your chin or something like that. You've got like the rusty centre and then the staining and what have you. It spreads out through the surrounding paintwork. Well, if you do a couple of stripes of this with a broad brush, with this, while it's still wet, the matte black, very dilute matte black that you've got in your milk bottle top, dip a pointed brush in it and just dab round on the paint panels, and what happens is the bit in the centre stays solid black, but it spreads out into like a browny halo around it, and that's what I've done on the mineral wagons upstairs. It just looks like rust. But again, if you want a panel that's a bit off, say the wagon's clean, but it's a bit traffic stained, bit of 26 and a bit of 29, the earth colours or whatever, into milk bottle top, and again just run it down the sides, and of course it knocks back the newness. So that basically, in a nutshell, is what I do. So build it square, weight it right, 27 grams, sort your couplings out, which I use the tension lock, as I said. As we saw with this, also expand a little time and effort to try and get your body square as well. Painting, I use Humbrol enamels. There's nothing rocket science to it. About the only magic thing that I use for building wagons, if you can call it a specialist product or whatever, magic, is this stuff, and I won't be out without it. And as I say, if you're inspired to have a go, everything I've shown you tonight, you'll be able to pick it up at Wally Show from H&A Models. And I took the liberty, when I was down at Stafford and he was there, to get some of his cards off him if anybody's interested, because he literally is a one-stop shop. He stocks everything. Jim at the Loco shed at Prestwich, he's a good source for stuff. You can get the brass bearings, the ready-to-run wheels, this sort of thing. He's also a good source for second-hand kits, gash kits and what have you, because who there's a penny junk that's going. Cultured Models, he has junk. I don't think Andy at Sawyer has so much. Cultured Models is where I get my Batman couplings from at the moment, because I shouldn't say this because you'll all be going down there. It's far cheaper than anybody else. And just keep your eyes open. I mean, possibly not to the extent that I've done, but boxes and mineral wagons like this. But it's handy. You pick the stuff up, and I don't bother with the internet very much, but I do have a look at Tony Wright's on RM Web. Having picked up during the lockdown. And fun enough, in the past 24 hours, somebody, I think I said in my introduction, somebody's posted on there, they've been to Ripon Show, bought a couple of ratio LMS fan kits, built beautifully square, the wheels around on them, it all works and runs and what have you, and all they've done is strip the paint off because the paint didn't suit them and repainted it within 24 hours, and they said £4 a wagon each. It's a bargain. So hopefully, if nothing else, I've given you a bit of food for thought. Oh, and one final thing on the painting, I nearly forgot. Humbrol paints and everything, they're never the colours they are on the lids.
No.
So this is what I do. Make my own colour cards like that, because I'm a beggar for remembering. Humbrol 133 is what I generally use for bauxite. It's there on the card. But all these mineral wagon kits I've acquired over the years, I use the floors like that and write on, and where I mix the paints together as well. Like on here, we've got a mixture of Humbrol 147 with something else and what have you. Just keep a record. Because you need all sorts of colours for doing stuff. You generally don't buy, say, a can of BR for 8 wagon grey or whatever for precision paints, because I'll guarantee it will not look like anything that you look on colour photographs. It might look like it looked when it came out of Shildon Works in 1959 or whatever. I mean, a favourite colour, because I was sort of modelling the shade of grey that British Railways was using in the 1970s, where they were rebodying mineral wagons at Horwich and what have you. And I was seeing at Bickershaw Colliery, and I was using Humbrol 129 Gullwing Grey, which I think was intended for a Corsair fighter bomber that deployed off Nimitz class nuclear carriers in the Vietnam War in the 1960s or something like that. But it's basically what floats your boat. Anyway, that's 9:30 on the dot. You've been an attentive audience, so if people want to get off, feel free. If anybody wants to ask any questions or whatever, come up and have a word afterwards, feel free. But otherwise, thank you very much for coming along. We've had a reasonable turnout tonight.
It's certainly very educational, and I've learned a thing or two.
Yeah, don't spend money.
I don't anyway.
Yeah.
Can I ask you,
Can I
gentlemen?
say something? If you want rubbish, bits,
Yes.
okay, do come and look at the
Exactly.
store. Like
Yeah.
most members
Yeah.
never come and look and see
Yeah.
what's there. I
Yes.
can promise you that there are some 16-ton mineral
Yeah.
wagons
Yeah.
in a box, and I suspect there will be more of the Airfix
Yeah.
kits, etc.
And Joe Brown's just told me we've discovered a sheet of lead in the workshop for weighting wagons. Exactly the same as I'm using. Well, frankly, I think there's probably enough there from what Joe described to go around to do us all for the next 10 years or whatever. But I mean, I've said about HA models at Whalley Show. I know people go to Whalley Show. Personally, I don't. Again, it's a money thing. It's too expensive. I think for what it is. But as I say, there's a stuff there at our show. Terry Smith, TMS Models. He's a veritable treasure trove for this sort of stuff. Very reasonably priced. You can get it locally. As Peter says, on our Bring and Buy, I sold all my Airfix cattle wagons on our Bring and Buy a couple of years ago. I'm wishing I hadn't now, because I'm building a train of cattle wagons to go a bit behind the Sutton Locomotive Works 24. But having said that, it does bring in the thrill of the chase of having to go and get these things. But again, if anybody's interested, I went to the last Bolton swap meet about 3 weeks ago. There was a guy there, never seen him before. I've got his telephone number. He's from Highton, I think, in Merseyside. These big plastic containers, so beloved of Alan Kay, like this one under here. He got them about this deep, and they were full of Airfix kits from the early 1980s. His 16-ton mineral wagons, brand new, unboxed, never been opened. They've still got the sellotape on them from when they left Haldane Lane in 1979 and 1980 or whatever. £4. And he said, that's for individuals. He says, if you're buying a few, I'll do you a cheaper deal than that. What I saw that he'd got, he reckoned he'd got everything. He'd got the 16-ton mineral wagons in profusion, cattle wagons in profusion, brake vans in profusion. I dare say, if he'd bothered to look under the stand and start digging, he would have had the cement wagons and all sorts of stuff. But what I did do, again, like picking these cards up from HA Models, I got his telephone number because I said, I'm doing a talk on building wagons or whatever. I said, you never know, you might have some customers for you. Give me your number. Because I say the Airfix kits, you can't go wrong with them. The engineering on them is absolutely superb. And I saw about 3 months ago the mastermind behind all this, a guy called Nicholas Cove. Not just the railway wagon range, but the entire Airfix range. He died about 3 months ago. His obituary was in the Times. I dare say it was in the Telegraph as well. and he lived to a ripe old age. He was well into his late 90s or whatever. And I cannot believe it. There was never any reference to him on the Airfix website. And he'd post a blog there every fortnight. I looked in vain and I thought, you wouldn't have a business without this blog. You know, you've got the foresight where they were making plastic ducks to float in your bath and polystyrene plastic kitchen utensils and what have you. And they made that Ferguson tractor as a sideline, which I think was about 1/32nd scale, and they did a 1/72nd Spitfire, and he joined them as a young man, a Jewish refugee from Czechoslovakia or somewhere like that, and saw the potential, and say without a doubt, best engineered kits I've ever come across, and it's a tribute to how good the moulds were, that they're still in production today, 60 odd years on. So, yeah. Right, well, so if there's anything else that springs to mind with anybody, I'll be a little while tidying up, so...
Well, thank you very much for that, Malcom.
I just hope it might have inspired somebody to have a go, whatever gauges the scale you're modelling.
Can I ask you gentlemen, show our appreciation in the usual manner?
Yeah, thanks very much, Mark.
Cheers, Mal.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm here on a Monday night, if anybody wants to come and ask me or scratch some bits